Former President Donald Trump is facing scrutiny for his actions leading up to the January 6th attack and for possibly mishandling classified documents that led to the FBI's Mar-a-Lago search. Today, a Florida judge will hear from several media organizations, including CBS News, asking to release the affidavit related to the operation. Senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge has the latest from Washington.
Good morning. There will be court action from New York to Florida today, where a judge will consider a request from media organizations, including CBS News, on whether key evidence should be made public in the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago. As the legal battle over the still-sealed affidavit moves to this Florida courthouse, the federal probe into former President Trump's alleged handling of top-secret documents taken to his Mar-a-Lago home remains under scrutiny. The search warrant shows 3 federal laws are in play, including the alleged unauthorized taking, disclosure, or destruction of government records. Later today, the judge will consider if law enforcement documents that justified the FBI search should be made public. The Justice Department claims releasing the affidavit could serve as a roadmap to the government's ongoing investigation, chill future cooperation by witnesses, and harm other high-profile investigations.
I'll talk about this until it's over.
A second criminal probe is unfolding in Georgia, where Rudy Giuliani, the former president's personal lawyer and longtime friend, appeared before a special grand jury Wednesday after he was subpoenaed.
So I was very happy that I satisfied my obligation.
Prosecutors are exploring whether Trump or his allies violated Georgia's election laws when they allegedly tried to overturn the state's 2020 presidential election results. And in recent weeks, grand jury subpoenas suggest federal investigators are examining key White House meetings leading up to the deadly Capitol riot. Former Vice President Pence said Wednesday he might answer questions from the January 6th committee.
If there was an invitation to participate, I would consider it.
The Trump Organization is also at the center of a long-running investigation in New York.
My chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg. And you think George is tough? Wait till you see Alan.
Alan Weisselberg could plead guilty as early as today in an alleged tax scheme to compensate Trump Organization executives off the books. In pleading guilty, Weisselberg has to acknowledge conspiring with the Trump Organization to evade taxes, and he could be called to testify if the case goes to trial. Trump maintains his innocence and says these investigations are politically motivated. Anne-Marie?
All right, Catherine, thank you. Here for more on all of this now, we're going to bring in CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman. And Rikki, we're going to literally just tick through it because there's so much going on with the myriad of legal challenges that the former president is facing. So let us start with what's happening in Florida. A number of media outlets, including CBS, are asking that the affidavit be released. It would give us details about why the FBI searched his residence. The FBI does not want it released. What are the legal implications of releasing a document like this?
The Department of Justice has been very, very firm about the fact that they do not want this affidavit released. I will say, in my experience, when the Department of Justice or any prosecutor objects strenuously, an affidavit is not released. However, you never know what happens in court. There may be a middle ground here that there is some of the information, if the judge wants to release some in the public interest, that there could be a compromise in court. The reason that the government wants to keep the affidavit secret is it would compromise the investigation thus far into what Mr. Trump and perhaps others have done, and it would potentially give up people who have cooperated as witnesses. So in addition, you have the specter of these top secret, particularly the top secret documents that are the SCI, the security clearance, SCR, security clearance required documents. Those are so sensitive because what if you have CIA agents who could be exposed in those documents? So there's plenty of reason to keep them secret, but the media and the public interest in general is very, very strong about wanting to know what is in there. I don't, frankly, expect the affidavit to be released.
All right, we'll keep our eyes on Florida. Next up today, former Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg is expected to plead guilty. He's hammered out a deal on essentially tax evasion, taking extra perks and not paying in his job and not paying taxes on it. But what are the implications for the Trump Organization? Because I think that part of the deal means that he has to testify. He has to get on the stand and say something. I think, you can correct me. But implications for the Trump Organization and implications for the Trump family?
Certainly implications for the Trump Organization, including its payroll division. What happened here was Alan Weisselberg is pleading guilty. In that plea of guilty, he has to admit to certain facts. And those facts concern what he got as, in essence, perks. He got tuition for relatives. He got cars. He got free rent. So this was not accounted for as personal income to him. So over a period of 15 years, it's about $1.7 million that was not accounted for, which is something that could have a maximum of about 15 years. But in the plea of guilty, what we're expecting is far less than that. And that's why people plead guilty. There may or may not ever be a trial here of other people or the Trump Organization. But if there is at a later point in time, then he is expected to testify, and I stress, against the organization. That is not the same as being compelled to testify against Donald Trump, the person. That's a distinction that should not be lost.
That is good to know. Next up, the former president's former personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, took a trip to Georgia. He testified in front of a investigative grand jury about interfering or trying to overturn the state's 2020 presidential election. We know now that Giuliani is a target and not a witness in such an investigation. He came back, didn't have much to say. He said he satisfied his obligation. Can you just explain what this process was and what happens next?
This investigative grand jury has a lot of teeth. This is a prosecutor who has been determined to go forward and look at election fraud, at tampering with the 2020 election by virtue of a target like Rudy Giuliani. Certainly, we also know that Lindsey Graham has been subpoenaed. And it would not take a stretch of the imagination to understand that the ultimate target here is Donald Trump. There have been many witnesses who have been called before this grand jury. If this grand jury at the end issues a report, that report would go to the district attorney, and then it is indeed possible that a new grand jury would then consider the exact charges and against whom. There is a factor that we also should look at. Rudy Giuliani, we don't know at this point precisely what happened yesterday. Did he take the fifth for all of these hours? Did he answer some questions? I mean, there's a lot of speculation. There's leaks. But nonetheless, we weren't in the grand jury room because it's secret. But there is always the possibility that if the ultimate target, being Donald Trump, is out there and the government could decide that they need Rudy Giuliani on their side. Rudy Giuliani is in his late 70s. He certainly is not going to want to go to prison. The government could immunize him at a later point in time if he would give them truthful testimony against Donald Trump. That's a possibility that's out there in the ether. Regardless of whether or not that should ever occur, we do have the statement that we know was recorded by Donald Trump that has been heard, I would gather, by everyone who wanted to hear it publicly. And that particular statement is asking the Secretary of State to find votes. Whether or not that statement is enough to prove Donald Trump's intent remains to be seen.
You know, it seems like there's an avalanche of legal challenges swirling around Donald Trump. But, you know, we've got his former CFO who's about to plead guilty, probably have to serve time. He's an older man as well. But as you point out, at least with that case, you know, we're talking about the Trump Organization and not Donald Trump. Even with all these different legal issues, I mean, is there a possibility that we could see none of them really fall on Donald Trump's shoulders?
Anything is possible.
Yeah.
However, there is a question of numbers here. I mean, you're dealing with a myriad of investigation, and all of this is all bubbling up with plenty of trouble for Donald Trump. Whether or not someone could miss an indictment in all of these places is highly unlikely. And when you get to the point of an indictment, we still have to remember you're innocent unless and until proven guilty. But the numbers is a point where you really feel like you can't escape. He's got a great lawyer in Georgia, in Drew Finley. I've known Drew Finley for decades. He's as good as it gets. He knows his way around the Georgia system ethically. But it is what it is. The evidence is what it is.
Yeah.
Those documents down in Florida, very difficult situation for Donald Trump, unless, of course, we consider the issues of, it's been said many times that Donald Trump did not like written briefings, that Donald Trump did not like to read. Apparently, there has been an affidavit signed by Donald Trump putting Mark Meadows in charge of the documents. So there's going to be a lot that we're going to watch, and I'm sure, Anne-Marie, that you and I are going to talk about.
Yes, we will. It keeps us in business for sure. Keeps us busy. Rikki, thank you very much.